What's up, y'all? I'm Will here with Schedulefly, and this is the Restaurant Owners Uncorked podcast, one of the highest rated hospitality podcasts in the world, brought to you by us at Schedulefly. We provide a very simple web-based restaurant employee scheduling software backed by legendary customer service. If you're on pencil and paper or Excel, or you're on some software with tons of bells and whistles and features you don't need or use, Schedulefly is the perfect place for you. Easy to use, point, click, and go, and we'll take great care of you. Schedulefly.com, free trial, check it out. All right, y'all, check it out. Stick is our sponsor, connectwithstick.com. This is an incredible text and marketing tool. So check this out. Engage your customers, drive foot traffic, and increase sales at your bar, your restaurant, your store with Stick. Your targeted messages reach your audience instantly, promoting special offers and events. Look, 98% of texts are seen within 3 minutes. So this thing is simple and it's effective and it works. Elevate your marketing strategy and watch your customer base grow with the most direct way to connect with your customers through text. Start today and see results on the very first text. Stick is a better way to connect with your customers and the easiest way to increase your sales. www.connectwithstick.com. And again, that's www.connectwithstick.com. Folks, this is an awesome sponsor. It's an awesome business. We at Schedulefly know them well. We know that the results are there. This is a highly effective tool, and it's run by a business run by great people. Check them out, connectwithstick.com. Hey, what's up, y'all? I feel like I keep saying this, but another special episode. I mean, this is Josh Halpern. He's CEO of Big Chicken. If you're not familiar with Big Chicken, you will be. They've been around for about 5 years. I think he said 47 locations right now. This is Shaquille O'Neal's chicken concept, and the story behind this and why Shaq is doing this is so cool. And just this whole episode is great. Josh is a super sharp guy. This business is doing very well and will continue to grow. I learned a lot from him, as will you. And, well, we've got a lot more on deck, guys, so keep listening. Stay tuned. Spread this episode around. Shaq, Big Chicken, Josh Halpern, CEO. Thanks for listening. See ya. All right, we are recording. I'm here with Josh Halpern. Josh, just do a quick introduction of yourself.
I'm Josh Halpern. I'm CEO of Shaquille O'Neal's Big Chicken.
Yes. Did you happen to see the email I sent you with the picture of me and Shaq?
I did. You guys are rocking the same muscles there. Unbelievable.
That guy. So what that was is he goes up. This is the second time he's done this, but we have a customer called Sup Dogs. So Shaq goes up and he DJs at this party every year up in Greenville, North Carolina, called Doggy Jams, and they get like 4,000 college students from East Carolina out on the city block, and he goes up and DJs, and I went this year just to kind of watch, and but the guy who owns Sup Dogs is, he's become a good friend. He's like, you want to get a picture with Shaq? I'm like, well, yeah, but he's on the stage right now, and Shaq looks over, he's like, come on, man, and I go out there, and man, I shook that guy's hand, and like he's just a he's on. I've never been anywhere close to somebody that giant, but man, he was so nice, Josh. He's like, I'm like, are you sure you're kind of in the middle of a set? He's like, no, come on, man. Like, how you doing? And what's going on? And it was,
The photo on my Instagram handle, Josh from Big Chicken, is literally him and me, and he kind of has his back turned, and I'm in the background, he's in the foreground, which as it is an unfair size advantage. And I'm looking up at him and I'm smiling, and it looks like a little kid looking at.
yeah. Well, look, thank you for taking the time to do this today, and I want to dive into a bunch of stuff about Big Chicken, but I want to ask you the only question I ask every single guest is how and when you got into hospitality. And yours is, I think, going to be different because so many folks that come on here are like, oh, I was washing dishes when I was 14, and then, yada, yada, yada. And you've been an executive in a lot of different spaces. I read your LinkedIn bio. So congratulations on a whole lot of career success. what? Tell me the story about your background getting involved with Big Chicken and how this all came about.
Yeah, it's like the Grateful Dead, what a long, strange trip it's been, right?
Yeah.
Look, at 14, I was washing dishes, I think, if not 14, 15.
Okay.
When I was in high school, I worked at a bagel shop and then delivered pizza once I got my license. And delivering pizza was still one of the more fun jobs I've ever had in my life. Driving around listening to CDs and, delivering pizza, making good tips in New York. But in my career, I worked for big CPGs. I worked for Procter and Gamble and Clorox and Reckitt Benckiser and Anheuser-Busch. And when I was at Anheuser-Busch, they asked me to take over the U.S. on-premise business. And on-premise is anywhere where you would drink a beer on the premise. So every bar,
Yeah.
restaurant, nightclub, stadium, hotel, etc. And I realized how much passion I have for the channel, right? At the end of the day, if you grow up in sales and marketing the way I did, you have to do a form of hospitality. And
Yep.
when I took over US on premise, we had years of market share decline prior to me coming in. And I come in in theory, I know nothing. I'm the guy from outside the beer business who called on Walmart and 7-Eleven and all these off premise chains. And I just asked one basic question, all these restaurant groups, like, what are the three things that keep you up at night? And I sat there with my little notebook writing them out, and I was ridiculed for this thing. And once we had 250 people response with 750 answers, we learned that there were exactly five things, right? And it was traffic, check size, innovation, server training, and commodity costs. And then we said, well, what do we know about traffic as a company, right? And they were like, well, what do you mean? We have $2 pint specials at every bar on the block for happy hour. Well, got it. Why would someone go to Will's bar versus Josh's bar? Well, what do
Mm.
you mean? $2 pint specials every bar on the block. Well, that's why they're coming to the block. But why would they go into Will's bar versus Josh's bar? They would just stare at me, right? And I said, okay. So we don't really know how to drive traffic, right? Check size. We'll just get them to drink more beer. Ha ha ha. Okay. What do you guys know about food? They didn't. What did we know about the service experience? We didn't, right? And then when we got to service, we found out craziest stat, it's my favorite stat. 97% of servers under the age of 40 don't actually believe they work for the restaurant they work for, right? They say,
Mm.
we're mercenaries for hire. We're here to grow our bottom line. Food service is just a stepping
Yeah.
stone, right? So we actually had to start teaching people, all right, so you're here for you. You're here for your tips. Yeah, I'm here for my tips. All right. Can I show you $50 worth of tips you left on the table tonight? What? What do you mean? Do you want the hacks or not? Because I could literally teach you how to go from 80 bucks on your shift to 130 bucks on your shift right now. But you got to do a few things.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, teach me because that's really important for my brand. So we started to piece this whole thing together. And then through that, I basically partnered with a group called JRS Hospitality to do a bar called Beer Park by Budweiser. They owned it, but we helped with the branding
Okay.
in Las Vegas. And at the end, the JRS guy said, the R. Perry Rogers is Shaquille O'Neal's agent. And he said, if we ever do a business with Shaquille, CPG, restaurant, or retail, you're going to have to come do this with us. And it was a joke for 5 years until it wasn't. And here we are.
Okay. Okay. Oh man, there's so many things I want to unpack from that. First of all, the consultative selling like that is just brilliant, and I completely agree. Look, anytime you're hospitality is at the core of, like, should be at the core of any successful business, right? Whether you're selling food or you're selling shoes or you're whatever it is, making the customer feel welcome, known, appreciated, being intentional, being thoughtful, recognizing what's important to them, is massive. When you so you started going to these customers, and talking to them about the thing that well, not surprises me, but what was the percentage of servers that felt like they were not working for the restaurant, they were working for
97,
themselves? 97.
97%. Yeah.
So I get, okay, I would imagine if I were a server, I mean, I want, like, to me, that's like a salesperson who's got all the inventory and all the products right there, and you just have to be good at selling it, but you're really building your personal brand, as it sounds like what
That's what
most of
it
those
is.
servers were.
In fact,
Yeah,
when you start talking to bartenders, they'll tell you if I left Will's bar and went down the block to Josh's bar, all of my regulars are coming with because they're
would
more
come
loyal
with.
to me as the bartender than to the bar itself. And that's
Mm,
genuinely what they believe. Now, whether that's fact or fiction probably depends on the circumstance, right? But that is their belief structure. And if you think about staff not from the position of a labor cost, not from the position of this thing on my P&L, not from the position even of a salesperson, if you view your staff as they're here to do a brand collaboration with us,
mm.
holy cow, so many things change, right? About how you view that resource, right? There, we've all seen the staff member. We all get the guest review where it's this staff member was a jerk and I hate you and I'm not coming back, right?
Yeah, right, right.
Your brand and their brand aren't jiving together for one reason or another. The more you can build that brand synchronicity, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, and the challenge with the servers feeling that way is that then I mean, how do you build culture around that? You know, what you're talking about is really building a very clear, defined, cohesive culture where everybody feels like they're a part of a team and they're in this together with the people running the business, not just as you said, I mean, I think that's a great term. They're not just mercenaries for hire within
No,
that
but
business. Now that
it's a different take on culture, right? Gen X culture, workplace culture was I have a boss, he has a boss, he has a boss. I go up this hierarchy and off we go.
yes, right.
Gen Z organizational culture is DAO based thinking, right? Decentralized autonomous organizations, right? So
Mm,
the ability for us to say, hey, you're on the line. What can we be doing differently? Right?
mm,
Hey, you're talking to our guests every day. What are the crazy modifiers they ask for on the menu? Right? Do any of you guys have any ideas for how we can build this thing different? Right? Um, Talking to your folks and letting them really collaborate with the brand is critical.
top down versus bottom up, guy on the ground. Like this is, yeah, okay.
And really, it's not
Respecting
even
that.
bottom up. It's a full ecosystem. It's just an ecosystem. And how
Yeah.
and don't get me wrong, I would be lying to you if I said we live in this perfect ecosystem at Big Chicken or any
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
restaurant business. But it's still the notion of how do you bring these folks in and say, all right, if I ask these folks, will you be with me in 5 years? The answer will be no. If I ask them, will they be here in 3 years? The answer will be no. If I ask them, will they be here in 1 year? People will tend. So we're here for a little bit together, right? We're here for a little bit
Mhm.
together. How do we make sure that these brands grow together in the right way?
Our brand and your personal brand.
That's right.
And how do we help you get to where you want to go
Yeah, and
next?
look, there are brands, people don't even realize it. There are brands that you think about right now and you say, this brand is a part of who I am, right? Yeah, I know of people who say the only cars I drive are Fords, right? Or
Yeah.
every Friday night my family goes to Chipotle, or a million of those things, right?
Mm,
You're basically saying these brands and I are in this brand collaboration together. That's what loyalty has become. Loyalty is
yes.
about true brand collaboration between yourself as a person and the company.
Yeah, and so the customer's involved in this too. I mean, I think of when you say that personally, I think of Patagonia. I think of a brand that,
Yep.
stands for something that I believe in and that I'm loyal to and that is not about just making a profit, but, those are the kinds of that kind of brand loyalty is it takes long-term thinking. It's hard, but it creates a loyalty that is just hard to it's hard to replicate and it's hard to compete against.
Yeah, but it's not a light switch. It's not you're either on or
No.
you're off. It's a dimmer switch, right? It's how do you just get it a little bit better tomorrow than you were today? One of the things we are a continuous improvement organization, and one of the things I love to say is we will never be as bad as we are today, right?
Ah, I
Think
love
about
that.
how much better we are now than we were 6 months ago. You know, you got to be continuous improvement and always challenge yourself and your assumptions and be willing to reinvent.
I read something the other day, Josh, and I'm trying to think of I may have seen it on LinkedIn, but basically this person was saying, okay, when you think of brands, if you think of, let's say Nike built a hotel, immediately you can think of like what that hotel would look like.
I already
But
did it. But the minute you said it, I was like, oh yeah, they would have a massive sneaker right when you walk in and artwork on the wall. And
and the big swoosh and it would be clean and crisp. And then you say, okay, if Marriott built a shoe, what it would look like? I got no friggin' idea. That's the difference between like, that's
Yeah.
real great, just beautiful branding. Whether you're a fan of Nike or not, you have to admit they've done an incredible job. Well,
But if Chick-fil-A created a shoe, you might actually be able to picture that. Or Chipotle because they've done it, right? And it made sense to people because people are so immersed in those brain cultures that they're willing to lean out and say, well, let's see what this is like.
well, okay. So let's talk about Big Chicken. And what is the origin story of Big Chicken? How I mean, Shaq had an idea or whatever. Like, how did this all get started?
Yeah, so I mean, it's Shaquille and JRS Hospitality, that group I mentioned earlier that I did the restaurant with in Vegas, and the R. Perry Rogers is Shaquille's agent, and Authentic Brands Group, who does all of Shaquille's business deals and licensing and stuff. The three groups got together and made this happen. For Shaquille, he was a franchisee of over 150 locations, and you know, it's interesting. Shaquille's the most authentic human being I've ever met. And I mean,
Mm.
ever. Every little decision in his life, there's a deliberacy to. People look at it and say, why is he on a commercial with the general, right? Like, why is that the insurance company he wanted to be with?
I've wondered the exact same thing.
They were the ones that gave him insurance when he was in college. When he never had
Ah,
any
when
money.
nobody else would.
Yeah.
Loyalty.
Loyalty.
Yeah.
So he'd rather be with the person he wants to be with. So, they started bringing him all these potential chicken endorsement deals, and he won't agree to them, right? And ultimately, they needed to break it down and say, why? Like, why won't you do this? And he said, my entire childhood was my mama Lucille making fried chicken, whipping up a couple sides, and we'd sit around the dinner table and laugh and do homework
Yeah.
and everything else. I just feel like if I put my name on somebody else's chicken recipe, that I'd be disingenuous, right? Even though he does eat at Chick-fil-A and Raising Cane's and other places, he just thought it would be disingenuous. And having JRS Hospitality and a restaurant group within it, he worked with the corporate chefs to basically say, how can we build some of Mama Lucille's recipes in a way that's commercial for the masses. And we actually just even shot content with Shaquille and Mama Lucille and one of Shaquille's children, which will come out later this year. But for them it's a family business, right? For them it's their origin story rooted in chicken, and I think that's something that the better I get at telling that story, and we just brought in a head of marketing that's what he did in his past company. The better we get at telling that story, the more people are going to be genuinely drawn to Big Chicken and to our future.
Oh, I love that. I love that story. I didn't know that story. That's an incredible story, and it immediately because everybody knows Shaq, and knowing how authentic he is and how important it was to him that he was authentic. Wow, that just makes you appreciate that this is not just like Shaq throwing his name on some chicken concept.
No, in
Man,
fact, he FaceTimes me every couple weeks and, with ideas. And he, is constantly giving us feedback. And if he hears from any of his friends that they went, tell me about it, tell me about it, tell me about it. And he's deeply invested in this because he's made enough money. It's not about money. This is about
yeah.
legacy.
Well, it really matters to him. I will say one thing that really caught my attention about him is when he was coming into Doggy Jams. There's 4,000 people. They're college students. They're screaming, yelling, like he's walking down the street. You see this guy from a mile away. He's got like some guys around him. And I tell you what, he stopped and looked every single police officer in the eye, shook his or her hand, and thanked them. And I mean, like authentically thanked them and like took some time, like to the point that you're like, wow, like, I mean, it took 15 minutes, because there was like a bunch of police officers around this like city block, and he just
Yeah.
every single one. And he even went past you see him and he's like, oh, okay, now he's at the entrance where he's going to come on the stage. Nope. He keeps going because there was another like 10 police officers down, past that. And he went to every single one of them before he came on the
And if
stage.
he
And it
sees
was,
any kids, he'll stop and talk to the kid. And I asked him about it once. He and I were riding in a car in LA together, and I asked him about it. And he said, look, when you're the size that he is, right? Like if you or I were celebrities, you could put the baseball cap a little lower, put your collar up, and people wouldn't know it was us unless you were right
Yeah.
on top of us, right?
Right.
They see him, like you said, from a mile away, right? So his only two options are to be a jerk or to be a great guy. And he chose a long time ago that he wanted to be a great guy. And,
Yeah.
for him, spending those 15 minutes is really nothing. He's having a fun time shaking hands and making people laugh. But for the people whose hands he's shaking, that's a life story that they're going to be telling for a really long time. And he's never lost sight of that fact. And I think that authenticity and that humbleness are what makes him such a great human being.
Yeah, I mean, a great leader, really. Do you know the story of the girl tossing starfish on the beach?
No.
All right. So those of you listening to this podcast, you're going to hear it again. So bear with me because I've told it a few times and I love it. It's one of my favorite stories. So this young girl she's on a beach and the tide is going out and there's like thousands and thousands of starfish for as far as you can see that have been, washed up with the tide. Now the tide's going out and they're going to bake and dry and die. So she's picking them up while they're still alive and she's tossing them back into the water. And this man walks along and he sees her and he's like, young lady, what are you doing? And she's like, well, I'm tossing these starfish back because, they're going to die if I don't. And he goes, yeah, but there's like 1,000 starfish. I can see all the way down as far as I can see. Like, you can't really make a difference. And she picks one up, she tosses it in and she looks at him. She goes, well, it made a difference to that one. And then he's like kind of inspired. And so then he starts tossing starfish. And then other people come up like, what are y'all doing? And the next thing hundreds of people are tossing and all the starfish get tossed back. And it all start with this, one experience that this one young lady provided for one thing, and that kind of thing. When you're somebody like Shaq, people look to him as, a role model and they look to him as an example and they look to him as a leader, whether he wants to be or not, he is. And so I guess my point is it's very refreshing that he operates that way because when you see that, like when I watched that, it did a little something inside me. I'm like, man, like that guy could have just blown by all of them. Like that's
Yeah,
really cool. And it just inspires you,
it does. And it allows him to be himself, and it allows people to be more tolerant of his imperfections because no one's perfect and a million things. He's the exact guy you hope he is, and that's what makes him great.
Okay, so how many locations do we have with
So
Big Chicken
between
right now?
brick and mortar and non-traditional locations, we today are at 47 locations.
47, and how many will you have a year from now?
Oh man, I don't want to give forward facing numbers. We're building every single month, and we continue to add non-traditional venues. We continue to add franchise locations. We continue to add new franchisees. One of the interesting things about working with Shaquille is I have 99 problems no one else has because of them. 99 things done for me that no one else gets because of them. So a
Yeah.
year ago, if you had told me we would have a deal signed for Central America, I would have been like, yeah, okay, that's on a bingo card for a 5-year-old brand. And here we are. Next year we'll open our first restaurant in Honduras and everything else. So we don't really get too far ahead of ourselves. That said, we of course we have 1 year, 3 or 5 year plans, but I don't make forward facing number projections or anything like that. We're working with every one of our franchise groups. We're adding new groups into the system. Our goal is to create the right stores with the right people.
So, how many of those are they is there a breakout company owned or franchise? Or are they all franchise or
Yeah, we have two company-owned stores in Las Vegas. The rest are either franchise or licensed. So we're on 4 Carnival cruise ships. We're in 15
no?
show arenas. I mean, we get around a little bit.
Are you tell me about franchisees and what are the sort of high level qualities that makes an ideal franchisee? Because I mean, you must have a lot of interest.
Yeah,
And
we've brought on 36 groups. We've turned down 4,700 applications.
okay,
Now,
all
most of
right,
those applications start with like, "Yo, Shaq, I'll open up a fried chicken joint," and then you're like, "Not my guy," right?
no,
But I mean,
right,
they've
no
still
thanks.
they've still applied, right? Uh,
Yeah,
the thing that makes that such a difficult question, it's such a simple question, but such a difficult question, is for every franchisor, the answer to that question is different.
right, yeah,
Franchising is like a marriage. If you asked 25 guys, what do you look for in dating a woman? 25 women,
hmm,
what do you look for in a guy? You're gonna be all over the board, right? And
sure,
for us, we're all over the board. And sometimes you don't know who you don't want to date until you've already dated that person, right? And
yeah.
we have some of that too with how fast we're growing. What we absolutely do know is franchisees that are the most successful are the ones that are in their stores, know what's going on, are committed to partnership, and are committed to growth. And if you're doing that, odds are we could tackle any problem together. We could have conversations on continuous improvement. We could try to make the right moves for the business. The ones that sit in the tower hoping to see the check roll in at the end of the month and are saying, I'm not really going to follow the system and I'm not really going to participate in the improvement of the system, they're the ones that struggle more.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's, I mean, you just have to have that entrepreneurial grit and hustle and drive, I would think. I mean, even you're taking a playbook, right?
Yeah.
So you're not just coming up with something from scratch, but any business like that, you just got to roll up your sleeves and get after it and be there and be present. And like, it's hard. And it's really hard in hospitality because you've got so many dynamics. You've got products, you've got people that work for you, you've got customers, you've got any given day, some ridiculous thing happens that you've never had to plan for. And then you have to, there's just so much going on. So it surprises me when you hear of people that think, well, I'm going to leave corporate America because I don't want to be in corporate America. I'm going to buy a franchise, but I'm going to hire somebody to run it. It's like, nah, dude, that's not the way to do that. Like, it's not going to work long term.
No, and I mean the truth of the matter is a lot of people that do that keep their day job, right? And they view it as passive income and there's drawbacks to that. Um, you know, eh, we don't bring in a lot of mom and pops. We want multi-unit, multi-concept franchisees wherever possible because the mom and pop, there's an adage in franchising, if you own one, you bought yourself a job, right? If you
Mm,
own 10, you bought yourself an empire, right? We don't have people that are necessarily frying the chicken as owners. Some do, right? But not a ton. But they do need to be involved in the business. And the ones that are able to be maniacally in the weeds on their costs and not just call up yelling, what's going on, right? They're the ones that are able to affect the most amount of progress and change.
Maniacally in the weeds on the cost. I like
We
that.
use the word
Um,
maniacal a lot around here. We're maniacally focused on our franchisees' unit level economics. It's the sole business objective that we have. And to a point that one of my board members is friends with another restaurant CEO, and he says, your CEO is maniacal about unit level economics and costs. Yeah, he is. Has he brought to the board the price of straws? You know, and my board member goes, no, he hasn't. He's brought to us ramekins and lids and cups and but not straws. Let's get him on the phone. And the board member calls me and he goes, why haven't you shown us straws? And I said, oh, we're vetting a couple. It's 2 weeks. We're going to be talking straws and we're going to show you what we're doing with straws at the board meeting. Right. Nice.
I
Right. And the
love it.
board member got off the phone and looked at the CEO across from him and said, see, you know.
Uh, you mentioned Chick-fil-A earlier. What are some of the brands that you admire?
Yeah, I admire different brands for different reasons. I mean, I do admire Chick-fil-A and I admire Raising Cane's because they did this the slowly, correctly. They don't necessarily ever deter from who they are and what they are. I really admire Chick-fil-A's passionate drive against the guest experience.
Mm,
It took them years to get every staff member in their culture to say, my pleasure, but they did it. And Raising Cane's, the way they enter new markets with a gusto is really unbelievable. We look at them every day and admire them because they're way bigger than us in the chicken QSR space. But then, in terms of other brands, it's I always had great admiration for big brands like Budweiser, because of just how big into the heritage of the American fabric that they are.
mm,
But at the end of the day, I think brands always have to be reinventing themselves, and they're not necessarily worthy of admiration all of the time, right? They're
mm.
You admire them for pockets, and I'm not going to talk crap about any brands here, but in all the brands that I could think of, including the ones that I've worked on, you have moments where you're like, man, I am so proud to be a part of this brand. Then you have other moments where you say, I'm proud, but we're not necessarily living up to our full potential. And I think those are okay. In terms of restaurant brands that I really look at and say, wow, I always put greater emphasis on hospitality than the food. right?
Mhm.
Because the food, that's my memory muscle. It's repetition. The food's either good or it's not. The service, that means you care.
All right, y'all, check it out. Stick is our sponsor, connectwithstick.com. This is an incredible text and marketing tool. So check this out. Engage your customers, drive foot traffic, and increase sales at your bar, your restaurant, your store with Stick. Your targeted messages reach your audience instantly, promoting special offers and events. Look, 98% of texts are seen within 3 minutes. So this thing is simple and it's effective and it works. Elevate your marketing strategy and watch your customer base grow with the most direct way to connect with your customers through text. Start today and see results on the very first text. Stick is a better way to connect with your customers and the easiest way to increase your sales. www.connectwithstick.com. And again, that's www.connectwithstick.com. Folks, this is an awesome sponsor. It's an awesome business. We at Schedulefly know them well. We know that the results are there. This is a highly effective tool, and it's run by a business run by great people. Check them out, connectwithstick.com. You know what Maya Angelou say, people don't remember what you said to them, and they remember how you made them feel.
No
And,
doubt about it. Yeah,
you know,
I'm not a big steakhouse guy. I love a good steak. I'm not a big steakhouse guy. I know some people out there who are like, oh yeah, one time I was in this city, I ate at the steakhouse. I don't remember too many steakhouse meals, right? But I absolutely remember going to 11 Madison in New York City and the hospitality there and the way that the servers treated and everything else. Those are the memorable moments. And when I think about the best meals I've had in my life, it was never the food itself. It was always the experience and the entire grandeur of the moment.
I cannot wait to call 11 Madison's a customer of ours, and I can't wait to call them and tell them that you talked about them on the podcast today. They get quite a bit of acclaim, but what a wonderful anecdote for them. Um, the interesting thing, just as an aside, if you're ever in Charleston or Nashville, I'm trying to think of where else they are. Have you ever heard of Hall's Chop House?
No.
Check it out if you ever go. They started in Charleston. There's just a few of them, but listen to what this is amazing. So they call each one. It's a family-owned thing. There's like, one person's in Charleston. I think like one lady's in Nashville. They call every customer the next day, thank them for coming in. Like and then because they're like, we got to leave a lot of voicemails, but they thank every customer that came in. They have their info. They call them. They thank them. They appreciate you coming in. Imagine that. Like imagine you go eat a steak or anything, and the next day, the owner calls you. It's like, thanks for coming in. We appreciate you. Like that one little thing.
Yeah.
Like
Well, and
hard
3 years later, that guest will not remember what each bite of steak tasted like, but they will remember that voicemail.
And what it does is I haven't even been. I know because I've had two different friends that have been, and they're like, because they know I do this, schedule fly thing, and say, no, I'm out in the hospitality. Like, man, I went to the steakhouse and this person called. I mean, it's just, that word of mouth is incredible.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I want to ask you about multi-concept franchisees, because you mentioned that, and that seems to be something I see a lot of these days. I get it from a franchisee because I don't want all my eggs in one basket. Like that makes a lot of sense to me from a franchisee. Why from a franchisor is that relevant?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a franchisor perspective, you say, all right, if these are the systems that we admire and they're successful in those systems, right? There's got to be a reason why they were successful in those systems, right? They have to be a good operational franchisee in order
Yeah.
for them to get the results. So it's already like proof of concept, if you will, where you go get the teacher cashing out their pension to become a franchisee. You don't really know what you're getting, and they just risk their entire life fortune on you, right? The drawback though to it, and it's funny, it took me a year to figure this out, and then I finally figured it out. When you look at every problem you have, and franchisor franchisees, there's always built-in natural tension in the relationship. It's a marriage, right? You may love your wife, but there's a built-in natural tension at times, right? One of the built-in natural tensions that exist with multi-concept franchisees is a lot of the issues come out of the fact, well, they're so used to being in this other system. They're
Mm,
always saying, well, I don't want to do it your way. I want to do it the way this other system did it. Even if the way the other system did it isn't the best way, just because that's what they're used to, right? Without naming names, one of our first franchisees who came in, we were like, how can this person not understand some of the basic tenets of construction? Like they have so many open units. How is this possible? And then we found out after the first store was built, I talked to the owner and he said, you know what, the chain that we're in, that they do the builds. We
mm,
agree on a budget and then they hand us the keys. This is the first time we
okay.
ever did this ourselves, right? So there are drawbacks like anything, right? There's consequences to every behavior you exhibit, right? If you go with multi-concept franchisees, you know, the consequences, there's many positives, there's negatives too. It's, are you accepting those consequences as a result of your decision? And are you learning from those consequences, right? So then we started to say, okay, if we're going to bring on multi-concept franchisees, let's make sure they understand this before we bring them into the system moving forward, right?
Yeah.
We have other franchisees where there's no local marketing obligation. You know, you just give a bigger fund to corporate and corporate manages everything for you. And then once a quarter or month, they sit with you and say, this is how we spent your marketing dollars. So we had franchisees out there that weren't spending any marketing dollars. We're like, well, why aren't you spending marketing dollars? You need to be spending marketing dollars. And they're like, we've never had to spend. We don't know, right? So, you know, like anything, there's drawbacks, there's advantages, there's disadvantages. You know, it's are you just following your decision all the way downstream? And if you can accept the consequences, good and bad, of the decision you're making, it'll be okay.
Um, I want to talk a little bit about Opus, and only because, Rachel Nemeth at Opus connected the two of us. So you must, that's all I know. I don't know if y'all use them or if that's something that all
We
of your
do.
franchises use. Okay. Is that something that everybody has, or is it just something you offer?
No, I actually needed that to be universal, so we pay for it for our franchises,
Okay.
right? Opus is for us, it's the future. It's so key to our 3-year plan because at the end of the day, going back to what we talked about earlier, Will, if it's about culture and it's about building
Hmm.
culture, how do you make sure you're training on culture every single day,
Yeah.
right? How do you, you know, it can't be in a loose leaf binder. 22-year-olds aren't going to read that loose leaf binder anymore. It needs to be digital. And it can't be some LMS training that you take once a year because Gen Z has like a 12-second memory and they're used to taking on content in TikTok type forms, you know, 2 minutes max, right?
Yep.
Not
Yep.
hour-long training modules in an LMS. So we really looked at this and said, and it's one of the key kind of beliefs that I have. We're all struggling across business verticals when it comes to the team because of the fact that you think about Boomer, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, Gen Alpha is right coming up fast, right? Our antecedents are so different in terms of the life that we had, right? I'm
Mm.
45 years old. When I went to college, I was one of 3 people on my freshman dorm room floor with a desktop computer.
Yeah.
I'm 45, right? There's people 20 years older than me in this. I was one of 3. Everyone else was going to the computer lab. By the time I graduated college, almost everyone had a computer, right?
Yep.
Nobody had
Yep.
a smartphone, right? First 5 years of
No.
my career, if you got back to someone within 48 hours, you were on the ball. Today,
Yes, you
it's
were.
48
Yep.
minutes, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, the world has changed really, really rapidly, but here we are trying to train all these folks, right? And the Gen Xers are happy with the loose leaf binder, are happy to sit down once every 6 months and do LMS modules. Gen Z's not. Gen Z is 70% of our staff. So we had to evaluate training solutions that were truly gamified training solutions, kind of the TikTok of training, if you will. And we selected Opus because we thought it was half gamification, half operational training, and we thought that was the right balance for us. And Rachel and her team are great. So I mean, Opus, it really is a phenomenal tool. Whenever we start to see trends in our guest reviews, so we use Ovation for guest feedback. whenever we see trends in a store that we don't like, first question I always ask is, how trained are they, right? Like, have they done the training? Are there people in office
Mm.
every day? Those sorts of things. And normally the answer is no, right? And the stores that have less guest feedback that's negative, typically they're the better engaged stores that are following the protocols more.
Tell me a little bit about Ovation. I just spoke with there's a growing concept. I mean, 15 locations called Biscuit Belly here in the Southeast, and they were telling me about Ovation. I had them on about a week ago. I don't know a lot about them, but I need to get connected with them. It sounds like because I've heard a lot of good things.
Yeah, no, I mean, Zach Oates and I have got very close. He's the founder there. Ovation looked at guest feedback, and guest feedback prior had been like, fill out this 50 question questionnaire, and like you could get free
Yeah,
fries the next time you come in. And you're like, man, for $3, my time's worth way more than. With Ovation, it's literally like, you ever see the signs like in the airport where it's like, which one of these 5 smiley faces going from angry to happy best describes you right now, right?
yeah,
That's the first question. And then it asks you anything you want to share, just one open-ended question, and that's it, right? And as a result, you're not getting the Likert survey, 1 to 5 as much from them as you are from other places. But what you are getting is raw, authentic data, right? And
mm,
it's really fascinating what comes out of it, because if I was doing the Likert scale stuff, it would be, okay, so my bathrooms are clean, cool, right? Like what do I do with that, right? We were able to identify through Ovation, for instance, for whatever reason, we struggle with sauce in the bag, right? At Big Chicken. And I think it's because our training team, we're so busy in the beginning, our training team leaves before we turn on third party, right? And as a
okay,
result, it gets missed. Um, but you would have never gotten that through one of those big Likert surveys,
yeah,
the 1 to 5 surveys. We got it through Ovation because hey, what's going on? And then you have the ability to have a two-way dialogue with the guest who's writing in, and if they give you a good review, you have the ability to bump that up. And we really talk with our stores on what's going on in their Ovation, and we actually each month on our franchise call share, here's the Ovation scorecard, right? So it's critical for us.
gotcha, gotcha. Um, how, so what is? Well, actually, let me ask you this. Um, is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that you wanted to make sure we talked about today?
So many things, but it's a short podcast. No, I mean, it's like anything. When you're growing as fast as we are, it takes a village. And we're really lucky that the village that we've built, which you're now a part of, is so critical. And that means having the right vendors like Ovation and Opus. It means having the right suppliers. It means having the right franchisees who are willing to say, let's have an honest chat about what's going on, right, with the business in both directions. You got to have that. It takes a village approach. It's a full ecosystem.
Okay. Two more things I want to ask you about. Number one is, do you have a franchisee in Richmond, Virginia?
Not yet. Why, you interested?
Dude, let me tell you something. We started this business 17 years ago, and I started doing this podcast like 12 years ago when I had to beg people to come on this thing, right? Like, and that was back, you'll appreciate this. I had a $35 microphone attached to the USB port of my laptop. At the time, I had a BlackBerry, and I would put it on speakerphone, and that's how I would record a podcast, right? And I had to beg because everybody's like, "What the hell is a podcast? And why do you want to talk? Like what?" So it's come a long way, right? Well, here's the thing: when I started this thing, Josh, I was like, we have these cool customers and like all these independent restaurants. I'm like, man, I want to own a restaurant one day. Like that would be badass. Hell no. I don't have what it takes, man. Like I'm self-aware enough to know like it's an intensely tough job. It's an intensely rewarding job. But boy, you better have like there's just some thread of DNA that runs through people that get this right. I don't think I have it. I don't think I could deal with all the like maybe it's just too many moving parts, too many things could go wrong at one time. It was just like, I don't think I have it. So, but what I love about doing this podcast is I get to meet so many people that I kind of tip my hat and I go, well, I really admire you for doing this because I know how hard what you do is. And I don't think most consumers know how hard what you do is. And I think a lot of people have tried to start restaurants because they thought it would be fun and cool and they didn't work because Like, yeah, it's fun and cool 1% of the time, but 99% of the time, man, it's hard, and you gotta really believe in what you're doing and the passion and the intensity and all that comes along with it. Like, you gotta be just cut out for it and wired a certain way. At least that's what that's my opinion, but the reason I asked you about Richmond is I know a guy, and so he's a multi-unit, multi-concept young dude. I have a lot of respect for him. I'll wrap with him afterwards and see if he knows about y'all and maybe connect y'all if you're interested.
That'd be
But
great.
I think he'd be really good at it. Um, the other question I want to ask you about is this is just personal interest, but I see that you're in like art into archery in a big way. It sounds
I'm
like.
not actually, but it's
Okay, what's the story there?
yeah, no, it's I'm on the board of USA Archery, right? And I'm starting to
Okay.
get into archery. In fact, right now I know that the tape this will air in a little bit, not today, but like right now, the USA Archery is in the round of 32 as we speak. So I want to see how Brady Ellison does here.
Oh,
But years ago, I filled out something that basically said, "Hey, if the USOPC ever needs me, come ask." And I got a couple calls over the years about joining the board of an NGB, the national governing body. And about this time last year, I got a call from the guy who was trying to find independent directors at USA Archery. And I the last time I shot a bow, I think I was 8 years old at camp, right? Um,
yeah.
but the sport is one of the fastest growing sports right now. A lot of people don't
Mhm.
realize that. In fact, middle schools right now are starting to add archery into the gym curriculum at schools. And the thing that makes it so interesting for me, and I why I'm really starting to fall in love with the sport, is because first off, like it's entering inner cities. It's giving people access that they wouldn't have had prior because a bow and arrow set could be as little as like $120, $150,
Yeah.
which is fairly affordable for schools or for inner city places to get boys and girls clubs, that sort of thing. And USA Archery put in massive effort into urban LA, quite honestly, to start to build facilities in urban LA. The second thing though is it's one of the top para athlete sports, and we're sending a full team of
Mm.
para Olympians to Paris. The para games are right after the able-bodied games, and it's really incredible when you have folks who were badass athletes who lost use of their legs or whatnot, and archery allowed them to continue to compete, continue to allow them to do some things. Um, it's truly a great sport, right? Because there's a team component to it, there's an individual component to it. It requires intense concentration, it requires intense discipline. It's really incredible, and it's when you think about it, all through history, empowerment has come from the bow, right? Like you go look at Braveheart, right? It's like send the archers, empowerment
Yeah.
has always come from the bow. And the fact that archery sort of reinvented itself in this really cool way, inspiring girls, inspiring people in inner cities, inspiring para athletes. I'm so proud to put my name on a USA Archery and to be a part of this incredible board.
Oh, man, I love that. Yeah, it's this simple thing. It's this, I mean, like going I've got a buddy, Luke Pearson, he goes and, like, goes out once a year to Colorado and hikes up into the woods and hunts elk with a bow, like, it's a bow and an arrow, and it takes focus, it takes strength, it takes attention, it takes patience, it get and by the way, talking about the young generation, I've got 3 kids, you've got kids, I mean, they live on these phones now. So, when you're doing archery, like you're not checking your text, you're not checking TikTok. You got to be like locked in and focused on something outside or, and just not on a screen. And I love that. I didn't know that it was growing like
And
that. So that's
one of the
awesome to
coolest things,
hear.
I literally was interviewing this time last year. We were wrapping up the interviews this time last year, and my sons, I have three young boys myself. They come home from camp one day, and out of nowhere, they had no idea what was going on. I said, "What was your favorite part of camp this week?" And they said, "We tried archery, and it's incredible." Whoa, right? Interest inside of three, right? But wow, the fact that all of them, right, were there. So yeah, and look, most of the money right now in archery is really tied to hunting, but no one's like, hey, you never shot a bow before, let's go elk hunting, right? It starts at an archery range.
Yeah, start at a range with the target.
And
Yeah.
and it's that memory, we all have those memories with our dad growing up, you know, or mom growing up, where it's like those memories stick with us for a long time. If you're part of hunting culture and part of bow culture, those memories with your parents when you're earlier at an archery range. So it's really cool. I'm trying to immerse myself more and more in the culture of it. And with the Olympics happening right now, you know, I just want to root for Casey and Brady and the rest of the team to bring home some hardware. It would be unbelievable.
Oh, that's amazing, man. Um, Josh, thank you. This is what a just an inspiring conversation and an educational conversation, and I appreciate you. I know you're a busy guy, so I appreciate you taking the time to do this. When if you do or when you do head down towards Charlotte, you got my info. Love to hang out. I live on a little farm in Waxhaw, just south of town, and I'm always around, and I'd love to see you. But in the meantime, thank you for doing this. Congrats on all the great success, and just man, just keep doing what you're doing. I really am glad we had this opportunity to talk today. Thank you.
No, same. And our new head of marketing, he lives in Charlotte. I'm gonna have to get down there before too long. Would love to take you up on that, see the farm, and have a bud with you. So it'll be great.
Oh, absolutely. Well, connect your head of marketing with me. Yeah, I'd
Perfect.
love to connect. All right, man. Well, thank you so much, and can't wait to. I have not been to a Big Chicken, so you don't have one here, do you?
Not yet.
Yeah. Okay. You have any in the Carolinas?
Not yet. No,
Okay.
we're growing, but we're not in the Carolinas yet.
Bring it on. All right, man. Thank you,
All right.
Josh.
Thanks so much. Take care.
See ya. All right. Bye.